Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings to you all as you gather for this Charis conference over this weekend. I really regret that I'm not able to be with you. I was looking forward to this weekend, but by the time you see this, I will be recovering from surgery, so your prayers will be much appreciated. Thank you for the opportunity to share a message with you as you gather for this conference. I want to begin by sharing some words of Pope Francis. They are words that he used when he was still a cardinal in Argentina with members of a community that he was giving a retreat to, perhaps a little bit like your conference this weekend. He was wanting to tell people to experience the wonder and the awe of the presence of God. He said, everything in our life today, just as in Jesus' time, begins with an encounter with this man, the carpenter of Nazareth, a man like all others and yet different. The first ones, John, Andrew and Simon, felt themselves to be looked at by Jesus. They felt he was looking into the very depths of their lives, reading something into their inmost being. And in them sprung forth surprise and wonder that instantly bound them to him and made them feel different. My hope for you this weekend is that you too will encounter Jesus, that like John, Simon and Andrew, you will feel yourselves looked at in the very depths of your being, that you will be surprised and full of wonder as you encounter Jesus this weekend. In that same talk that Pope Francis gave in Argentina, he said we cannot understand the dynamic of encounter, which brings forth wonder and belief, if it has not been triggered. If it has not been triggered by mercy. Only someone who has encountered mercy, who has been caressed by the tenderness of mercy, is happy and comfortable with the Lord. May you this weekend feel the tenderness of God's mercy. May you be happy and comfortable with the Lord. We encounter God. We encounter God through word and sacrament. Here this weekend, you will encounter God through one another. In his recent letter for World Communications Day, Pope Francis entitled his message, Speaking with the Heart, and he subtitled it with a few words from St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, Speak the truth in love. This weekend, speak from your hearts. Speak the truth in love. Pope Francis is calling for more heart in our communications. He tells us that everyone has the responsibility to communicate with an open heart. The message is really for media personnel, but obviously it applies to each one of us. When we think of the unfair, the often untrue ways that communication is used today, the evil ways that is used sometimes, we know it's necessary for us to speak the truth in love. It's very easy to stop and think about how social communications platforms can be misused. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. Speaking the truth in love is the only way we will encounter one another and help one another to encounter someone, the person of Jesus who brings forth encounter and enables us to be caressed by the mercy of God. Imagine if we started all our conversations with the goal to help one another be caressed by the mercy of God. Our world would be a better place. One of the challenges today is that our world is inclined towards indifference. That's why Francis tells us that we should use our hearts to speak, and to speak with charity in order to make a better world. Over these days you spend together, remember that everyone has the responsibility to speak with an open heart. Francis knows the importance of discernment. I read an article just recently by someone who had been interviewing him, and the person said you could ask him a question and he could very possibly spend 10 minutes in total silence as he reflected, prayed and discerned on what his answer should be. That's why he tells us it's only by listening and speaking with a pure heart that we can see beyond appearances and overcome the vague din, which is also in the field of information around us and which doesn't help us to discern in the complicated world in which we live. He says in the message, the call to speak with the heart radically challenges the times in which we are living, which are inclined towards indifference and indignation, and speaking in ways which falsifies and exploits the truth. So he invites us to reflect on our words, on the need for words which are capable of doing good for others and of touching even the most hardened of hearts. There's a wonderful paragraph in that message which reads, communicating in a cordial manner means that those who read or listen to us lead to welcome us, and to participate in the joys, fears, hopes and sufferings of the men and women of our time. And using those words, he's clearly reflecting the very first lines of the Second Vatican Council document, Gaudium et Spes, the Church in the Modern World. The first words of that document say, the joys and the hopes, the griefs and the anxieties of the people of this age, especially those who are poor or afflicted in any way, these are also the joys and the hopes, the griefs and the anxieties of the followers of Christ. Indeed, nothing genuinely human fails to raise an echo in their hearts. Those who speak in this way, therefore, love one another because they're hearing what people are saying from their hearts. I also want to add this part from the message and ask you to reflect on it over this weekend. In that message, he quotes St. Francis de Sales, where he praises St. Francis de Sales first, and says how he offered us a worthwhile example. And he wrote, the saints' meekness, meek attitude, humanity, and willingness to dialogue patiently with everyone, especially with those who disagreed with him, make an extraordinary witness of God's merciful love. Think, therefore, over this weekend, as you speak together, as you pray together, as you reflect together, of the various ways of communication that you use, how you can communicate and be an extraordinary witness of God's merciful love. That is a wonderful message that Pope Francis uses for this year's Social Communications Day in May. It does apply to us personally, because if we do not communicate personally in a way that shows love and truth, if we do not speak from the heart, then we will never facilitate an encounter with another or with God. I do hope that this weekend will be a time when you truly encounter God. through word and sacrament and through one another. I wish you every blessing for a wonderful, blessed weekend in which you encounter the person of Jesus.